marvels of daily life are exciting. No movie director can arrange the unexpected that you find in the street.
No one moment is most important. Any moment can be something.
Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 171 for, what are we, in the middle of November already?
Middle of November.
Middle of November. Oh, no. November. Actually, November is a good month for me. I like November.
It's when winter really socks in up here, though.
It what?
It really gets socked in here.
Oh.
We get the real snow that tends to want to stay.
November snows.
November.
That's so rare here. We don't get that. We used to, but like having a rare Thanksgiving in the snow. I remember that maybe as a kid once in a while, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I like it because it's my birthday month and Thanksgiving month for us in the United States. I know you guys have your Thanksgiving in October, right?
The day I arrived in New York was our Thanksgiving Monday.
Oh,
yeah.
What is the Thanksgiving like? Do you guys do the same thing? Turkeys?
Pretty much, yeah. Turkey
Pumpkins.
dinner, whatever. There's no pilgrims or anything like that, but it's still a turkey.
There's no pilgrims here anymore either. They're all gone.
We don't dress like pilgrims or whatever. But it's just.
Oh, there's something to be thankful for.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Many birds died. Yeah,
oh, yeah. Well, I'm sorry about that. So anyway, yeah. So welcome back to the show. Welcome. This is our first show with you being back in your neck of the woods and me being in my neck of the woods. And we're trying new sound devices here. So I'm just going to sort of say if things sound a little weird, we're working stuff out. But
the sirens are still coming in.
Here, I'll pump up the volume. Sign. You can hear the sirens. Since my noise gate can't get rid of those.
It's fine. It's homey to me now.
Well, I'm so used to it, I don't have a sound studio, so
you're getting there though. You got that fancy soundboard.
Yeah, I got to figure out how to. If I soundproof this room, then I won't have any light in it, so that will be the end of it. I'll have to get a podcast studio someplace. But anyway, our first, and you've got the same microphone that I do now.
How did that happen? I can't imagine how that happened.
That was you got that at a tchotchke shop in New York. That was one of your take-home gifts.
That place in Sunset Park? No, sorry, that was Memory. That was Memory we bought. There.
Yeah, Memory. Well, the idea is that we hopefully can try to make the sound, sound the same. Your other mic sounded great, but now we both sound. Hopefully, we'll both sound the same.
And my son is taken off with my old mic, so.
Oh.
He said when I brought the new one home, he said, I read about that mic. It's really good. Can I have your old one? Okay. He didn't even breathe. He didn't even take a breath between sentences. It was like, it was his opportunity to pilfer some hardware. So whatever. He took my X20, took my little Fuji camera, which I was happy to give him. So now he's, he's killing aliens with the professional sound now.
Well, good for him. Good for him. It's nice to have stuff recycled. But anyway, it's fun to do this. If you can't see my desk here, but I got the Roadcaster. I got this Roadcaster thing on here with a lot of buttons and my Star Trek, transporter dials, knobs and stuff like that. So I thought I'd give it a try and see what it's like. But we'll see how this goes. And anyway, let's get to what we wanted to talk about.
Yeah, what are we going to talk about?
Well, you wanted to talk about.
Did I?
You had this idea, so I liked it.
Okay.
Well, I titled this one "Lessons from the Street." That maybe that's the working title, but maybe I'll keep that. But you wanted to talk to you about your experience of street photography in New York and see where that goes. I had a bunch of prior to us starting to record, I actually sort of binged on a few YouTube episodes of. I did a search on street photography just to sort of get into the mindset. Of course, 90% of the videos there are like 10 tips for street photography, 5 tips for street photography. Don't do this in street photography. Don't do that in street photography. I was like, oh, gee. not armchair. Sorry, I don't mean to disrespect, but there's a lot of those tip things, which I don't think is something that I really care about. It's more about the experience.
Yeah.
And since you've been back, since you've been here, and now you're back and you're processing your pictures, I'm starting to see a lot of the stuff that you did while you were here, and because I didn't
you were standing right there when I was shooting too. Actually, before I go into my spiel here about what I was doing, or how I felt and what was going on. What was because I got a little bit of reaction from you when we were out shooting. What did you think of us? Like, because you don't usually do photo walks with other people or other than people that you're teaching or whatever. So how was it for you, me dragging you like a dog pulling the leash all the way uptown?
Well, well, that's interesting.
I've got a real purpose in mind. So I'm walking, I'm going. So what was your feeling?
That's funny because on my photo classes, when it comes time for the photo walk part, I say, okay, everybody go and walk, and we're not walking together as a group. Like, come back in a half an hour. And they're like, why? Because I said, I don't want to get a bunch of pictures, everybody pointed at the same fire hydrant, because everybody walks around together. They tend to shoot the same things.
Right.
That's very interesting that I wasn't expecting that question. You're right. I don't go on street photo walks with other photographers. In fact, generally, when I do street photography, I'm on my own. And what's also interesting is I haven't gone out and done specific street photography. Like, I'm going to go out like what you did, right? Like the whole point of being in New York is you're going to go out and you want to experience the streets and you'll fill in, the rest of it, desires. But I don't do that. Most of the time I was doing street photography, it was on the way to work, on the way back, or I'm going out to breakfast, or I'm in my neighborhood, or I'm going out to the grocery store. Like, I generally don't plop myself in the middle of some place in the city and say I'm going to do this. So this was all new for me in some way. And even the photo walks that I've done, they're not really street photography walks. From walking around, I think one of the last walks I did was in Greenwood Cemetery, so that doesn't really count. But I did a walk. It was actually the last one I think I did in Red Hook. No, it wasn't prior to Superstorm Sandy, because that was 2012. I had done photo walks then, but in Red Hook has kind of, walking the streets of Red Hook, Brooklyn, and with a group of people and shooting whatever's around there and stuff like that. And so that's maybe the closest thing I've had in terms of that, walking the streets with other people. But with you, like as a pair, I don't do that often. So this was very new for me. And of course, I can't remember if we talked about this in any of the previous episodes, but part of this was walking around neighborhoods that I grew up in,
right,
and places that I've been, and I actually haven't been there in a long time. And so I think we talked about going through my timeline of life from modern times from the past into modern times. I think we did it backwards. Instead of going from, I can't remember, but we started off in places like, I grew up here, and this is what I did, and this is what I did, Washington Square Park. So that was different, So I'm showing you a little bit. I'm being a little bit of a tour guide as well. And you're like, shut the hell up. No, you didn't say that. Not, I know.
I'm sorry if that was the vibe. No. I'm very nonverbal. And actually, there was a moment at a restaurant where you wanted me to do math on the check, and I couldn't. I was like paralyzed because
you had brain lock
I couldn't
or something.
Speak. I was doing the math in my head, but there was nothing coming out of my mouth. That's just like weird way my brain is wired.
Well, that's funny. You actually sound like a little bit. I recently bought a treadmill, right? So I'm doing hamster wheel exercises at home, and what's really funny about it is that when I'm walking on it, and then when I'm done, I stop, and my body feels like it's still walking. Like, it's a very strange experience. It's a lot different than when I'm walking outside, because when you're walking outside, you stop and you stop. This thing is stop, and I feel like I'm still going. And so I'm wondering if that's the same thing with you with this thing. You're shooting, and then you stop, but your momentum, your I don't know, your energies or something like that are still in that mode.
Up in the eyes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, doing math or you're trying to figure out the bill at a restaurant, you're like, it's not working.
Yeah, there's numbers. That's all I know.
Yeah. So, this is interesting.
But from a photographic point of view, I know there was a kind of the reliving your life. Was that most of what you got out of it, or?
No. Sorry, I'm being lots of blah, blah here, but so I wasn't expecting this question. I think, prior to you arriving, my street photography has taken sort of a back burner,
right, for
a lot of reasons, which I've said about in the show. And, I don't know if I wanted to get back into it. And so with you popping into town, got me a chance to sort of limber those, those fingers and eyes and things, get that stuff sort of jumbly again and see what happens. And that was for me very interesting because again, I don't shoot in the city. I don't go into the places that we're doing. We're going to a lot of touristy places, or actually I say crowded places too. And it forced me to sort of, I don't know, get those, see if I can get that eye moving again, in a different way. But I found myself sort of following your lead more.
Okay. Well, we're in each other's way. We're in each other's frames for part of the walks too, right?
Yeah.
Like, could you move up ahead or get behind me or do something? Because I'm getting the back of your shirt in half of my pictures.
Well, that's the interesting thing about street photography is that we're walking together, especially in a tight area.
Yeah.
One of us is going to get in the shot. I mean, because we can't walk side by side because there's only so much room on the sidewalk. And so we either one of us had to go ahead or stay behind.
Yeah.
But one of the days we were out, I'm shooting with, I get this in front of me here. I've got my Fuji X Pro 3 with this kind of wonky looking TT Artisan 17 millimeter lens.
It's got that very kind of
it's tapered,
double pointy tapered. That's the word I was.
Yeah, it's kind of weird looking. It looks like one of the things that the Beschers might photograph out someplace, like a water tower. I was using other lenses. Actually, one of the days we went out, I think I went out with, I can't remember if I brought my medium format one of the days, which was a big mistake. In terms of street photography, that's not a good street photography camera, at least for the stuff that I was thinking we were doing. We're moving very fast. Okay. But and then I was using some autofocus lenses, which I didn't think really worked. And I haven't really used this lens. And because it's a 17 millimeter on a small sensor, that makes it about a 17, 16.
Be like 21 millimeter.
25, right?
25. Sorry, 17. Yeah. 16 is 24.
Yeah, so it's about a 25 millimeter, which is a bit wider than what I'm used to.
Yeah.
In terms of shooting, I usually shoot with my X100, which has got the equivalent of a 35 millimeter, and I'm sort of used to that. This is a little wider, but I think I might be jumping ahead here and answering.
That's fine.
Further ahead, but
I'm fine with it.
Okay, as long as everybody else is fine with it. Wait, we're supposed to be talking about. It was your trip.
I know. We'll talk about the 17 and then we'll move on.
I know. I like the way you did that. You turned that around really quickly.
I just wanted to know because maybe I'm using it a little bit as fuel for my part.
Sure. Okay, that's fine. Because a lot of things were different for me. Okay, first of all, walking with you or walking with a second person, listening to sirens going by.
I'm used to that now. I slept right through. It was beautiful. I didn't mind it at all.
Walking in areas that I've lived in before, like I don't really go to my old neighborhoods or walk the places that I walk to do photography. If I'm going to do photography in the city, I'm going to go someplace that I don't usually go to. Just because it's what I'm used. I might not go to Times Square. I might go to Times Square, or the Met Museum or something like that, or just up Wall Street or something like that. Yeah. So we walked in a lot of places that I'm familiar with that I usually don't do street photography. That was new. When I put on the wider lens, I was actually more satisfied with the whole process because I like shooting in zone focusing mode. I don't, because it's a manual focus lens, so I just set it to f11, set the hyperfocal distance, and then I'm not worrying about things like
Right.
I don't have to worry about the autofocus or facial recognition, any of that crap, and I can just take a picture. And then also when I set it up on black and white, it was getting like, as I was looking at the pictures after I would take a shot and I would look at the screen and chimp at it a little bit.
Yeah.
I was getting sort of, oh, this is kind of cool. I was like, oh, this is kind of fun again. And so I really started to get the, I don't know, some feeling of excitement that I haven't had in a while. And again, it's not like my typical photography, my typical street, Brooklyn street photography.
It's Brooklyn walks.
Yeah. It's a kind of a one-off kind of thing. But maybe not. Maybe it's the beginning of something new. Because I know we were walking and I kept saying I could just do this anytime I want.
Yeah.
I could come into the city and drop in, and so it got that sort of sparked again. But it was nice to do things that I wasn't used to doing, which I wasn't quite prepared for. Like I wasn't prepared. Like, oh, this is gonna be new. I thought it was gonna be the same kind of experience I was having in my usual street photography, and was a bit different. And yeah, we shot a few subjects in a similar subjects, like there's two women on the street taking pictures of each other.
Yeah.
From different angles. I don't know if we had any other crossovers. Did we? I haven't seen any yet. That was the only one. That
I don't know. I can't think of anything.
Yeah. Well, we haven't posted enough pictures yet.
No.
So that was the only. I guess if it's one subject, and we shot it from different angles, so it's like two different kinds of pictures, and you process it your way, and I process it my way.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't matter. It was like when we walked by that subject, I said, "Did you photograph that?" I said to you,
"Yeah,"
because it was so obvious. Like this woman posing for another woman with a cell phone, and it was such a nice, like it was such a city thing, and they didn't seem to care about us, like just walking by.
They didn't care, and it was lit so well.
It was the lighting was really good, and both of us were shooting black and white, so I knew that shot would look good in black and white. So anyway, totally new experience for me in a while. So that's. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
Or did I get into the
Excellent. No, it's perfect because I could kind of sense this energy coming for you, and when you were, looking at the output from that 17, I thought, well, this was good. And then you posted some of those pictures or shared them within a small group of us, and well, I think you posted on Facebook actually because commented on them.
And then Vero, a couple of shots so far on Vero.
So, yeah. So for me.
Right. This is going to be but this is going to be like a summary of your trip a little bit, like the whole reason why you came here. So,
yeah. And I've had some time to do so. Well, I did quite a bit of post at your desk where you're sitting right now, pumping out some images that kind of jumped out at me in the Lightroom catalog. And so that's part of my deal is, and it comes from my street photography here in Calgary, where I would shoot at the lunch hour and then I'd come home after work. Or I'd shoot downtown in the lunch hour when I had the job downtown, get on the train, come home, blah, blah, have dinner with the family, things settle down. My wife starts watching evening television, and then I get on my laptop and process the pictures for the day. And so that's been my rhythm. So that was definitely because I had enough material, enough source material to do that again. And so that's why I was doing it at your place when we got back from our walks.
How much did you end up shooting roughly?
Less than 3,000 frames.
Wow. Okay.
It's actually less than I thought I was going to shoot. And I think a lot of that had to do with the first day, that correction the first day. And I think I mentioned it in the previous podcast too, where I'm making those adjustments of things that, and I'll get to some of those details a bit later. But anyway, so basically the context of this was really looking forward to the trip, getting to meet you, getting to be in New York, studying New York, what I could from the movies and photographs and photo books that I have. And then once I was on the ground, I discovered I had a lot of pent up creative energy that I think came from the Mexico trip. So I learned I didn't learn that many lessons from the Mexico trip. One was to stay true to your own style, your own way of working, and let the environs reveal themselves in your images. Don't try and be touristy. Don't try to be um, like the quote that I just read. Anyone can just make a nice picture. It's just, what are you choosing to put in it? So there was that part, like that's what really, in my first day, I'm like, wow, I'm obsessed and this is awesome. So there was that release of being able to do it and being in a place and a time where there's so many people around that there was lots to capture, and there was lots of fine tuning and adjustments, and you could stand and watch this group. And what was interesting about the tourists was they were static, right? So you could and Washington Square Park was the same thing. People are very often static. So you could kind of circle around and get some ideas and position yourself and see where the light is, where the sun is, and kind of take your time. I found that at Ground Zero around the Oculus, there were tourist groups there in different languages and stuff. And so they were fun to shoot too, because not just locals, because they have their own way. They have their own way they carry themselves and the way they express themselves. So I was happy to capture that. So this pent up creative energy, that was definitely the first thing that I noticed. Then in my chimping and in my the first evening when I came and uploaded the pictures into the camera, and what those adjustments were, and I think I expressed to you some dismay that I tended to want to take pictures of women, as opposed to in Calgary, both men and women sort of have equal interest in my hometown here. And then I noticed in Mexico, there was the men that seemed to be the more interesting subject in the culture there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that, the women who were working at the markets were watching the men walk by, almost like I can imagine a construction zone here, and some attractive woman walks by. They're all like watching him, and they're stopping whatever it is they're doing. They're watching this man walk by. But New York, Manhattan, anyway, it's about the women, and the men are kind of like eyes down and just going where they're going to go, or they're kind of the tired husband with the family on vacation, or they're just, honey, we're in the city because you wanted to shop or whatever. And the women are all like shoulders back, like, let's go shopping. That's kind of a cliche, but the energy I found from female subjects was far more interesting to me than men. And so after the first 2 days, I thought, I just have to give into this. I'm going to just, there are groups of people, and there's, families and things that we shot that those images do work. But in terms of walking on the sidewalk, who was I going to point the camera at more? And it was, I would say 70% of the time they were female subjects. And so I found that interesting. Originally I found it disconcerting, but I thought, I'm just going to go with this and see what happens. I'm glad I did, because then something wouldn't be gnawing at me the whole week. I could just work and do whatever it was I wanted to do. And that's how it worked out.
So no real judgments about that then?
I thought I was kind of judging myself, like disappointed, like I would like to have, all, sexes, races, creeds, try and get everyone in the frame. And it wasn't really feeling like that at first. And then I thought, after a while, I was thinking, I can only follow the subjects that are gonna that I think are gonna work well for me. And if I have to be interested in the subject in order to point the camera that direction, and then do the whatever machinations I have to do to line up and shoot. So that was interesting for me.
Let me ask you something though. When you were
sure
initially shooting, you weren't noticing this until you got back and started looking through your work. That's really interesting, because you're almost on two different brains there,
Yeah.
There's the I don't know, whatever the hunting is, and you're not you're not thinking, you're instinctual, and then you're going
It's
back,
all
and then
instinctive,
and then you're using the the intellect to sort of process and
right.
I mean that literally and figuratively. You're processing what you've shot in the day, and then fine tuning for the next day. By the time you were done, was Sunday, right? I think it was the last day we were shooting. It was Sunday.
Yeah.
Had you
because Monday we recorded the podcast and then I flew out Monday afternoon.
Right. So by Sunday, and we had gone into the city on Sunday, I believe, to the High Line, I think.
And then we came around and ended up in, I've forgotten the name of that park. They were setting up the skating rink.
Bryant Park. Behind it's behind the main library, the big library with the lions. So by then you were like those. In other words, you first come here, and then and you're on instinct, and then you're coming back, and then you're processing, and you're saying, "Oh, look at now you're starting to notice," and then those two things are separate at first, and then I'm wondering if by the time Sunday came, you're like those two things are not separate. Your instinct
by Wednesday,
by Wednesday. Oh, by Wednesday, okay. So
by Wednesday, I'm like
fine tuned, yeah.
And so by the time I was alone on the Friday, right, it was the Friday that I was alone, I was completely, submerged or whatever you want to call it, completely involved. I did have an issue with my feet and so on, which I'll get into, but just with all the walking. But yeah, so I was making these adjustments and feeling really good about the images that I was getting. Disappointed at the number of misses of the autofocus, but I'm moving more quickly in this environment in New York than I am in Calgary. So I was like, okay, calm down, pick a higher shutter speed, maybe knock up the auto ISO a little bit more so that, maybe I could stop down. Although I decided not to. I decided to keep the lens at f4 for the whole project, or the whole trip, because there's so much detail in the background. If I'm shooting black and white, I want it to be silvery, kind of out of focus detail that helps give a kind of a moody feeling to the subject. So I got that going. You were very kind and patient with me about, and also showing me around, which was great. And so that was, that was the big first lesson, getting started shooting in New York.
Lesson number one. Okay, what was lesson number two? Oh, before we get into lesson number two, what were we talked about the camera and lens that I was using. Let's talk about your gear for the street.
Sure. I have two Fujifilm X-E3s. I had brought a bunch of 7 Artisans lenses and stuff too, but I thought most of the time that I'm shooting street is with that 23 f2. It's that whatever, the Fujicron, some people call them. And I have, that's on my silver body. On my black body, I'd had the 16 millimeter f1.4 was on most of the time, and sometimes the 50 f2, but I don't think I might have used the 50 f2 maybe half a dozen times with that, but it was really all about that 23, which is 35 millimeter equivalent. It's not too wide and it's not too long, so it ended up, and it's the lens I use most of the time. It's what I'm most comfortable with, and it's what's on all the folks that have this X100s, right? That's 23.
Yeah,
there's a reason why they use that lens. So so in terms of the gear, very comfortable with the gear, can go in, make changes, do whatever I need to do. It's out of the way. So when I'm shooting from the hip, it's all pretty much intuitive. I have this thing of kind of leaning over. I don't know, you probably watch me, but I always made myself aware of it, I think, in a few situations where when there's a subject that interests me, I kind of lean over and I'm like, I want this picture.
Did you also lean back too a little bit or something?
A little bit when I have the camera up into my eye. I do both. Yeah. But it depends. But, and then kind of whatever, walk sideways or whatever until I get the image. But it's kind of funny. Like I was aware of my physicality because it was happening so often. I became a little bit more aware of the way I was moving. So I thought that was funny that I was doing all this dance, whatever.
I should have I should have filmed you. I should have videoed you.
Yeah, you should have. Yeah, just to bring the camera next time. I'm sort of promising everybody I'm going to come back. But you can certainly,
Did you shoot a lot with the 16? Did you do?
I did quite a few, just in places like in the museum and in the library where there were some big, actually big spaces, wide angles of maybe closed in spaces that, wouldn't be able to get with the 23. And I was doing kind of architectural and kind of fine arty pictures. So I used a 16 for those. And from what I can tell, those pictures look great. So I'll be working on those probably through the winter, trying to do some fine art stuff.
Oh, you got your winter stuff all set up for you.
That's my winter stuff. So this whole thing about, it was the streety stuff is really what I came to New York for, but there's plenty of opportunity to shoot fine art. So I did that when there was opportunity and there was, when there was no one around and we were in kind of empty hallways and that sort of thing. So, so that's what the 16 was really there for.
One of the things you mentioned that I want to resonate with you as well is you said you shot about 3,000 frames. You thought you shot more. You were surprised at that. And I was also surprised because I have, all my cameras I was running, continuous high. Shooting in 3 bursts.
Oh yeah, I was kind of teasing you about that because that's something I would never do. I would never do. I take 2 or 3 frames, but I would be, actuating the shutter myself.
Well, I tried it. A lot of these cameras, it's very sensitive. So if I press down the button, I will get 2 or 3 shots. Just no matter how I touch the button down. But I like to shoot in 3 frame bursts usually. Yeah, I even do that on my X100. So I always say spray and pray. It's not quite that, but I like to have a few options, especially
so that you don't get a blink or something.
Yeah, and if I'm moving, things will shift very slightly. But I also was surprised because I thought I had shot a lot more. By the time we would sit down, have a minute, and then I could chimp through my images a little bit, I was like, I swear I just shot a lot more pictures. from like the last time we stopped. I was walking around and I'm like, that's all I did? And it's funny because when we're walking, or at least when I'm walking and doing this kind of photography, maybe it's because my eye is starting to get into that street photography mode. And so my camera is not recording as much as my eye is. Right. And because I'm in that mode, I'm not in the mode of just, going from, 23rd Street to 42nd Street because I have to walk there. I'm in the mode of like looking at things and seeing, okay, what's gonna be worth photographing, what's interesting and whatnot. So my eye and my brain is in that mode. And then when I go to look at my camera, I was like, oh, I didn't take that picture of that person.
Right. I had some of the same. Yeah.
I forgot that because I was looking at them, but I wasn't photographing them because I was in some sort of mode. So that was something that we were really in. This was the most probably intense street. We did it, 4 or 5 days. There was a couple of days where I worked, and you were on your own. But other than that, it was like I haven't really gone out and photographed that intently. Sorry, Opie is deciding he wants to talk to the rest of the world. He wants to be famous. But to do that much photography in that short a period of time was also something new for me. So I think that's what was going on. My the brain was in capture mode. The camera didn't work as fast as my brain did.
Right.
Which is kind of why I wanted to go to, I was getting kind of fed up with autofocus. And even when I shoot with my X100, I tend to turn off the autofocus and I shoot manual. I do zone focusing and hyperfocal distancing. And I like it because I'm using a wider lens. I don't mind the backgrounds being sharp. And so that's why I figure out, I'm going to go sharp as possible. So I'm stopping down to like F8 or F11. And just looking at my distances, and I'm actually paying attention to that. I'm always shifting the distance on the lens. And, to go back to the gearhead thing for a second, this TT Artisan's lens, actually, it looks like the hyperfocal distance marks on the lens are actually pretty accurate. I've noticed with some of these third-party lenses that's kind of questionable what their markings are.
A serving suggestion, as they say.
Yeah. But I've noticed that this was pretty dead on, and I was actually quite surprised at the quality of the pictures. When I looked at them again, it's not my style. I'm more the 23 millimeter, or 35 equivalent. But when I see this kind of wide stuff, I was like, that was something that. I was like, oh, that's new for me. Like, I don't really go for that ultra wide thing. So I have a subject in the center. They're kind of small, but then you have a little bit of more environment. And I was like, that's kind of new for me as well. And I enjoyed that. Yeah. I wouldn't have done that necessarily if you weren't here. I wouldn't have thought of doing that. And I don't know if you sparked it. I can't remember, but it was just maybe like, oh, I go to, try on different shoes this time, try on different lenses.
When you're wider, you tend to zoom in. You tend to concentrate on the subject more and maybe have a sensation that you want to be closer.
Yeah.
To like when I have the 16 on, like, okay, I'm gonna have to get a little closer then.
There's something about that intimate moving into people, and that they're not knowing what you're doing, because both of us are walking around with cameras that look like touristy kind of. I shouldn't hate to say that, but like point and shoot cameras. They don't really look threatening or anything like that.
Yeah.
But in terms of the look, shooting black and white, I'm shooting JPEGs. I know you're shooting. It's funny because we're both doing such different things in a way.
Different things, yeah.
You're going with RAW and you're processing. I'm going with JPEGs. I do a little processing, but not too much. I try to, but I always like the JPEG starting point. Mm-hmm. And then going from there. And so it's interesting that we're both walking next to each other and we're getting such different kind of things, and we're seeing it from different points of view. You're seeing New York for the first time. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
I saw Mexico for the first time. So in a lot of ways, and I did say in the previous show about, in a lot of ways, New York is a city like any other. There's streets and cars and places you can be and places you shouldn't be. And so that part was comforting to me, where Mexico, it's their cut stone streets. If you trip, there's sharp edges everywhere. You gash your head wide open, whatever. I don't know anything about that. And the curbs are all different heights. You don't know, step off, it could be 18 inches down to the street and so on. And so there were some other physical dangers going on there that there weren't in New York, other than walking in front of traffic.
Yeah. Well, traffic.
I can do that at home here, there's, that was, that familiarity of being in a city was some comfort, and the noise and everything, that I was all cool with that. It's just the frequency of people going by it was unbelievable and fun, and I won't even say nerve-wracking. It was just invigorating. To just walk, and the faster you walk, the more subjects you got. And
I started thinking of other places that we could have gone to. In fact, I was watching a video today. Shoot. And I was thinking 6th Avenue, or what they call the Avenue of the Americas. Actually, at some point they changed the name. I don't know what street it changes into the Avenue of the Americas, but between 42nd Street and 57th Street is, businessy kind of thing area, but it's very, these tall, it's beautiful. I love those buildings there. Radio City Music Hall is there. With that stretch, you get a lot of the business people, and it's often very crowded, and would have been really nice because the weather was nice. There've probably been a lot of people out there, and that would have been that's a good haunting ground, because we look back at the photographers from way back when, the Winogrands and the Meyerowitzes and stuff like that. I was just watching some videos, and they're out in those areas, and catching the.
That's the next trip. We only got as far as Midtown. We got to, Flatiron.
Yeah, we went up to
as far
34th
north
Street. We went up to 34th.
Yeah.
But that's not quite.
We'll go from 34th, north.
Go further north, on the certain avenues. It's strange for me to think of you seeing New York for the first time. Like, I wish that I could see New York for the first time. Like, I can't. Although, if I walk through with you, I get to see it a little bit differently because sort of being a tour guide, being a tour guide as well, but also trying to, put myself in your shoes a little bit and try to see it in the same way. Actually, here's the other thing. I started looking at some of you started posting up your pictures faster than I did, or sooner than I did, because you were doing them while you were here, right? You posted, and then I was looking through my pictures on my camera, and I was like, this looks like a picture that you would have taken. Like, I found myself, It didn't look like. Now, you might think differently, like I wouldn't take a picture like that, but maybe you did. But I was looking at, there was some shots, and I can't remember them now. I'll dig them up for the show notes and put them in there. But I was looking at it, I was like, that looks like something. Oh, like the couples in Bryant Park.
Right.
There were some couples that I shot in Bryant Park, and I looked at them, and or a family. There was one family like sitting around the table, and I looked at that, and I'm like, that looks like your shot.
The one where everyone's in their own little world.
Yes. Yeah. I showed that to you. Yeah, you said that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, this is really interesting that your style is sort of rubbing off on me a little bit, or I don't know how that's happening through osmosis or
we're walking together, I think. Or
I'm starting to think differently. I'm starting to think differently. So this is all very interesting to walk with another photographer doing street photography. I mean, because most of the time you see these people who are shooting street photography, they're all by themselves. And so it's interesting to be with you and then see how that rubs off and like what the dynamic is. And it'd be interesting when I go back in the city next time I go, I'll probably be myself. And so like, will I carry that over? Will I do the same thing? And the weather's changing. So this is kind of the nice thing, is that the weather's changing. So the light is getting more attractive, I think, for street photography.
Yeah, this is Mark Ryerson and I, we're getting into till the snow gets really deep, the sun low in the sky. It's great.
Yeah. Well, you just posted this picture in color, which was interesting. And I want to talk about that.
Sure.
Of this couple walking. I don't know where they were walking, but they were walking towards the sun. So we were walking in the opposite direction. Describe that picture a little bit, and we'll put this up in the show notes.
It's a picture of a younger couple. One is wearing heart sunglasses. She's kind of a sense of humor, and the other one's wearing sort of like a gold aviator sunglasses. He's got longer hair, and he's got a brown shirt on, and the whole cast of the image looks like it's sepia, like it's brown. There's the dominating the palette of that. It's very kind of, I would call it muted. I guess it's not truly muted, but it's a very narrow palette, and they're sunlit, and was just something about the energy of them and being in the sun, and with this kind of brownish palette that gave me the message, you're not taking the color out of this one.
Yes, yeah.
And I did sharpened it a little bit here and there, and vignetted just a tiny bit. That's Ansel Adams' trick, and just a little bit, just so that you notice, but you don't notice.
I said
that was the only processing I did to it, and it just came out, and it has a very interesting quality.
When I looked at it deeper, it took me a while to see the glasses, the heart-shaped glasses. When I caught those on the woman, it made me laugh. But the whole thing about the picture reminded me of I think I wrote this on your Facebook page, simultaneously a paparazzi and a posed picture at the same time. These people look like a young couple, like they were stars or something. Yeah. And it was really interesting that you caught that, at least in my eye, in one image. It had that, you popping up and taking a picture of them, but they're posing. And I don't mean like posing for a paparazzi, but like posing for it's sort of the opposite of a grab shot. Yeah.
She had, their elbows were locked together, or she was, reaching around to his elbow, holding they were definitely a couple. So there was an energy between them, and there was energy in their environment, and it's if they were getting energy from the sun, it was very interesting.
And what's saying about that picture to keep it in color? What was like,
the palette, the brownness of it, like it looked like it almost had a filter on it.
Because it's kind of monochromatic anyway, right? I mean, in some way, yeah.
But it deserved the gold of his glasses and the kind of almost pastel. She had a Pixies t-shirt on, or a Pixies shirt on. It was just, it just worked. It just worked as a color image. And I'm not going to, when there is an image that really deserves to be in color, I'm not going to, I don't have that much of an ego where I'm going to say, nope, I'm going to get rid of all this and I'm just going to make it black and white. I mean, I do work in black and white is my go-to processing trick, but some images don't need to be subjected to it.
Yeah, I thought that was that picture worked very well. Cool. And then you said you had some failures, right? Some stuff. Then we went to the museum.
We went to the museum and there was the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Metropolitan Museum of Art. I gotta say it.
You can just get the Met.
I don't want to confuse it with the opera. Isn't there a Met opera?
Yeah, the Met, but you can, by context, you know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and I know you had taken pictures in the galleries there before of the marble statues.
I love doing the sculptures.
In the American wing, and I was kind of obsessed with them. I knew that, and we had a much earlier podcast, we were talking about taking pictures of the spaces where the statues are and all that kind of stuff. And so I just turned them into like portraits, like portrait studies and all that sort of thing. And it wasn't so much because I didn't really look at those images when I was still at your place, but when I came back home and I was looking at them, I'm like, this is the wrong way to handle the subject. What I should have done was back off a little bit and show the statue in its environment, figure out a way to show it in its environment. So there's a sense of scale and all that kind of stuff. And it's not just a marble face and its texture, kind of grainy texture dominating the frame. It was just not doing anything for me. And I know you had success and you were showing me pictures that you took with your GFX, where you could really leverage the higher resolution to show the work, maybe taking the bottom corner of the frame and then showing the wall above, which is something you posted today. Mm-hmm. I'm like, that's the kind of direction I should have gone. So I really missed the boat on that in terms of, kind of a fine arty kind of thing that I might have tried to chase after. Now I have to, I can't be too hard on myself there because I was really distracted by, it was the day we saw the Bescher exhibit. We're kind of overstimulated by that. I was kind of sort of obsessed with showing my wife pictures of this particular part of the gallery where a movie was shot there. So I was like trying to, and I had her on the text and we were kind of going back and forth. So I wasn't really my whole self, when I was shooting there.
Okay.
No. But that doesn't, that also at the same time doesn't really excuse me, but it is interesting that I didn't put those works in the context of what they could have been to make stronger images. I'm sure I'll be posting images of the statues, but they won't. I don't think they won't have a candle to what you were doing there that day, because they kind of stayed in that corner of when the Easter Island whatever the statues were against that wall in that.
Oh, that's in the Egyptian wing. Yeah. They were just the figures in a row. But I did get a shot in the American wing where you were of a woman posing next to a statue, and I haven't posted that yet, but I do like the image. But I haven't. It's not. It doesn't quite look like the kind of picture that is mine. You know what I mean?
Right.
it would be like a one-off. And so I'm actually curious about that. Let me talk about that for a second with you.
Sure.
And let's make sure we get enough time. Yeah, we get some time. You get these one-off shots, right? I mean, you're coming into New York and you're bringing your style with you, but I'm sure you're getting a few things that you don't, you're in a new place. And so you're photographing different. How do you feel about posting those that are not quite in your quote unquote style?
I'm fine with them if they're funny or, interesting, or like I'm kind of grappling with it. Some of the pictures that I did take, like some of the reliefs and mosaics and so on that were in the museum, I'm sure I will post them at some time. For me, it's more a matter of timing. I don't want them to sort of post them at the same time that I'm posting my street work. It's just a flow thing, whatever. But I don't have trouble posting something that's, and I think the image that you're talking of has some humor in it too. And I think that would offset any kind of lack of you-ness in it. Sort of like, look what I saw when I was at the museum. I think that for me, I think that's fine.
Yeah. One of the things for me, I like going to museums, and I tell my students, if you have nothing to do and you want to do street photography, bring your camera to a museum, because you get, the couple of benefits are, first of all, it's great to look for people there. Plus you get to look at art, so you double whammy thing. But I don't know. These pictures are sort of percolating for a little while. So we'll see what happens with them. But I always wonder about that. If like I post up a single picture that's, not quite part of my tableau or whatever you want to call it, and something that, like, this one stands out, like, where did that come from? And then go back to my normal thing. How is that working? Is that worth doing? And just because, do I want to get likes, or do I want to get people to see it? Or is it a funny picture? Is it worth showing because it is funny and it's a moment that, was caught? But I do need to talk about that one picture. I know we're in terms of time, sorry, but when we went to Central Park and you photographed those people along the bench,
the family.
I don't know if we talked about this specifically, but we had gone. Actually, during the trip, we went to a few places where photographers from the past have taken pictures, right? We also went to the jazz studio. We talked about that. And this one we went, and I think we talked about this in the last episode a little bit. I can't remember.
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah, but this picture of these four people, family perhaps, on a bench roughly at the same spot where Gary Winogrand took the photograph of the couple, the interracial couple with the carrying their pet chimpanzees with a crowd around them. And it was the exact same spot. In fact, we were going there like, here's where he stood.
Yeah.
But tell me about that picture, because that was one of the first ones you posted.
It's one of the first, and it may be my favorite picture of the whole trip.
Really?
Actually.
Really? Wow.
Strangely.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had just gone through a little reconnaissance there of seeing, okay, here's the building where he shot the picture. We're looking at the Winogrand picture on your phone, and we're like, okay, there's the windows for that building, that kind of castle-like building there on the east side. Is it east side, west side?
Yeah, it's the east side of Central Park. Yeah.
Central Park. And so I saw this family. They're all dressed in black, and I shot about 4 frames while we were still talking about Winogrand and where was he standing and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of had this feeling that there might be something here. So when we got home in the evening and I went through them, I'm looking for, because we had Winogrand on the brain. I was thinking of that Winogrand picture from 1964, World's Fair, New York World's Fair, 1964. And it's a group of women sitting in a bench, all in different poses. And I wanted something that sort of reflected that, and at least tangentially related to that. So we had these parents that were sitting, they were looking in different directions. Their feet were in different orientations. Their hands were in different orientations. And then the 2 teenage daughters, one with her head back, kind of leaning into her dad, bored out of her mind, and the other one leaning back and like staring straight at me with her hands tucked in between her knees. similar to her mother at the end of the bench, and the feet, with ankles crossed and all that kind of stuff. There was just this energy of everyone's there together. They're very clearly a family, but each one is in their own little world. And it was like a ringer. It was like, okay, if nothing else, and that was a confidence booster too, because if I don't get any other good pictures out of this trip, I know I have one, and this is the one.
Yeah. Is that what you look for?
That's where it started.
Is that what you're also looking for when you see a group of people like that? That the fact that everybody's sort of in their own world. Like
yeah,
you're actively looking at that.
That is something I think you see in some of my other images where people are looking in different directions, or they're supposed to be together, but they're not, apparently not in this frame. And maybe it's just something about my interest or perspective on interpersonal relationships. Maybe. Who knows? I think beyond me.
I think that's what's rubbed off on me, because I think now that you're talking about it, by the time we were shooting in Bryant Park behind the library, and we were walking and all these people are sitting there, I was looking for that. Like I was paying attention to people and how they were sitting at the, whatever little tables they were and stuff like that. And so I think some of that from you rubbed off on me. And so that's kind of something I think I'm going to start looking for too, because I really like.
Yeah, also, it's different. There's two different modes, right? One is when you're walking past people on the sidewalk, like the couple in the color image. They're just walking down the sidewalk, and my job there is to just try and capture them, whatever they're doing, and that's usually 1 or 2 frames. I have it or I don't. The people that are sitting on the bench or sitting at the tables having their little cafe, whatever. They're static, and then that's when you can do the kind of whatever you want to call it, deciphering of the different personalities of the people sitting there. And it's more, those pictures tend to be more interesting if you can get them.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad
those are sort of icing on the cake compared to the. Yeah.
I'm glad that some of that rubbed off on me, because I'm looking at the pictures and those ones, like those are the ones you would have taken. Yeah. And I'm also looking at them. I'm paying attention to a different way to look at subjects when I'm photographing in the street now. So I thought that was, I think that's something that I'm getting from you. Anyway, I think we need to wrap up. I think we've been talking for a while. Because we're doing this live now, I think we can now say who the quotes are from the beginning.
So yours was first, right?
Mine was first. Mine was Robert Doisneau. And yours was?
Gary Winogrand.
Or Larry Winogrand.
Larry, like I said last time. I'm so sorry.
I thought that was really
I don't need him rolling over in his grave, man.
This is his younger brother.
I revere the dude, and I just, I want to do my best.
Anyway, since we're able to do this live now we can say the quotes. Before it wasn't possible. Anyway, I like doing the quotes at the beginning, especially when they're related to the show. So thanks for hanging out with me. Where can people find you in the world?
They can find me on Instagram as Ward Rosin Fine Art. They can also find me, and I did start reposting there. So I did post some images there of the New York, the last 15 or 18 images that I posted there over the last couple of weeks have been to Instagram. Also on Vero, I'm W Rosin Photo there, as I am on Twitter. I'm also W Rosin Photo there. On Facebook, you can find me at Ward Rosin Photography. And I have my little website called rosin.ca, rosin.ca. And I also have my little photography business selling 7 Artisans lenses and lens adapters of different makes. And that's at Ornis Photo, ornis.photo.
Our unofficial sponsor.
Hey, yeah, I'm trying to work that in now. I'm working on the.
And we got that in sync. We were able to get that. Yeah. Anyway, and I can be found at mostly on Twitter at AM Rosario and Vero at AM Rosario. I now got my YouTube handle. YouTube is giving out handles. I couldn't get AM Rosario at YouTube, so no, it's just at Antonio M. Rosario. But I've got that. And what else? Oh, Facebook is Rosario Photo. You can find me there. And yeah, that's about it for now. I haven't set up any Vero accounts for street shots yet, so we'll work on that at some point. But anyway, this sound stuff is working out. We'll see. We'll refine it as time goes on. But it's nice that we both, if we do a video now, we both have the same mics. We all look like we're really important.
Yeah. It's like a real podcast.
A real podcast, yeah. All the 169 episodes prior to that, they're all fake until now.
Yeah. Well, if you have you need to have the same mics.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with me tonight.
My pleasure as always, man.
And we'll see everybody in a couple of weeks at the end of November. Have a good Thanksgiving for those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving. Don't eat too much, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Good night.
Good night.